you all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to this meeting of the New Hampshire Fish and Game Commission, February 20th, 2019. The public is entitled to attend all commission meetings, and when recognized by the chairman, the public may speak on any item on the agenda. The chairman reserves the right to limit public comments to the extent necessary for the orderly conduct of the meeting. First item under action items is approval of the January 9th, 2019 commission minutes.
So moved.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner McGinnis, seconded by Commissioner Patch. No changes or omissions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Second item is approval of the January 29th, 2019 special commission meeting minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Stohl, seconded by Commissioner Hodgdon. No omissions or changes.
I had one.
Okay, Commissioner McGinnis.
Tanya, on the motion that I had made to move to be neutral, I had said until we get more information.
Okay, so noted. Everything else okay? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm gonna abstain because I didn't make that one.
Abstention. 2 abstentions. Commissioner Temple and Commissioner
Loopy.
Loopy.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Well, couldn't say Commissioner Christina, that wouldn't be polite. Okay, all in favor? And then opposed, that's right, no 2 abstain. So opposed, there was no opposed. So moved. All right. Next item, consent agenda. The following items have been grouped together and are hereby noticed as consent agenda items to expedite action on routine matters, which may not require public discussion. The commission may vote to approve these matters as presented. Commission members may remove certain items if further public input or discussion is deemed necessary. Now, we have quite a few items on this consent agenda, so I'm going to break it down into Part A and Part B. Under Part A, Item 2A, approval to accept the donation of $1 from Damon Boudreau, Bennington Fire Department, to be utilized by the Inland Fisheries Division. And in parentheses, the reason Mr. Boudreau paid $49 in cash for an ice fishing tournament and wished to donate $1 to round it up to 50. Item 2B, approval to accept the donation of 7 pair of FXR back shift speed boots valued at $1,070 from Dan and Lori DeRosa of Mass, to be utilized by District 1 conservation officers. 2C, approval to accept the following donations made to the small gifts and donations account. Ronald Brissett of West Nottingham, New Hampshire, $75. David and Grace Mann of Merrimack, New Hampshire, $1,000. Rivermead Retirement Community of Peterborough, New Hampshire, $500 for a total of $1,575. Item 2D, approval to accept the donation of $500 from Timothy Phelps of Francistown, New Hampshire, in memory of William Phelps, to be utilized by the game management account. Item 2E, hang on a second. Approval to accept the donation of $35 from Chuck and Wendy Campbell, North Reading, Mass, in memory of Scott DeCosta, to be deposited into the small gifts and donations account. That is Part A. Does anybody have any questions on those items?
Make a motion to accept.
Motion made by Commissioner Green, seconded by Commissioner Patch. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Part B. Item 2F, approval to accept the donation of $50 from James Waldo and Susan Mitchell of Draycott, Mass, in memory of Robert Edwards, to be deposited into the small gifts and donation account. Item 2G, approval to accept the following donations in memory of Wesley Foote, Manchester, New Hampshire, to be deposited into the small gifts and donations account. Frederick and Michelle Sam of Derry, New Hampshire, $50. Donald and Diane Foote of Tilton, New Hampshire, $30. Elaine Buvias and Danielle Masblas of Manchester, $25. Joan Fontaine, Bedford, New Hampshire, $50 for a total of $155. Item 2H, approval to accept the following donations in memory of Walter Freeman Jr., Andover, Mass, to be deposited into the small gifts and donations account. Richard Bernard, Methuen, Mass, $50. Janet Ellen Graham, Watertown, Mass, $15. Fred Scriber, Rowley, Mass, $50, total of $115. Item 2I, approval to accept the following donations in memory of Rosemary Fisher of Keene, New Hampshire, to be deposited into the small gifts and donation account. Fred Hamlet, Keene, New Hampshire, $100. Christine Zelazny, Keene, New Hampshire, $50, total of $150. Item 2J, approval to accept the following donations in memory of William Bill Austin, Gilmanton, New Hampshire, to be deposited into the small gifts and donations account. Susan and Leon Nelson of Andover, New Hampshire, $25. Bacon Joy Foods Incorporated, North Andover, Mass, $50. Mac Austin, Belmont, New Hampshire, $50, total of $125. Item 2K, approval to accept the following donations in memory of James Warden Sr., Portsmouth, New Hampshire, to be deposited into the small gifts and donation account. Robert Stewart, $100. Lafayette Road Residents Association, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, $25. Andrea Papuzzi and Unified Arts Team at Rye Elementary School, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, $35 total of $160. Okay, item 2L, approval to accept the donation of 13 used ice fishing traps valued at $100 from Bob LaRue to be utilized by the Let's Go Fishing program. Item 2M, approval to utilize $1,273.76 from the sale of fish food account to purchase 2 new 450-gallon polyethylene rearing tanks from Pentair Aquatic Ecosystems Incorporated for the Warren Fish Hatchery. And that is it.
Motion approved.
Motion made to accept by Commissioner McGinnis,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Green. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so moved. Our next item is a donation.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay,
So, just so you're aware, that last item was not a donation. It was a request to do an expenditure on the sale of fish food account. I just wanted to...
so that shouldn't have been on the consent agenda
Correct.
then?
Correct.
We'll make it number.
Okay, so let's back up. Our vote went to 2L. So on 2M is not 2M anymore, it is something else. Tanya can make up a number. No, you already got 3. You gotta be 4. Item 4, approval to utilize $1,273.76 from the sale of fish food account to purchase 2 new 450-gallon polyethylene rearing tanks from Pentair Aquatic Ecosystems Incorporated, which I think Jason did this just to hear me say that all again, for the Warren Fish Hatchery with Jason Smith.
I just thought you'd find a name that's easy to pronounce refreshing after that first segment. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. This is the expenditure request to utilize some funds out of the sale of fish food account to buy a couple of 450-gallon polyethylene rearing tanks for our Warren Fish Hatchery. Back in 1992, when Warren Fish Hatchery was reopened, we were heavily involved with Atlantic salmon restoration. Since that program ended back in 2013, we've been starting to raise brook trout friendly there for our helicopter stocking program. I don't know how familiar you guys are with that particular program. Great program. We do 48 ponds in one particular day. We contract out a helicopter. It's all hands-on, great event. Warren's a great fit. One, because we were looking to fill that void that was created by the Atlantic Salmon Restoration Program going by the wayside, and it's located right in the center of the White Mountains, where we can get the fish, get them on the helicopter, and get them into these remote ponds very, very efficiently. So what we have for them is we have a target size, because if we don't raise them large enough, they don't survive very well. But if you raise them too large, we can't get enough of them on the helicopter. So Warren is a good fit because of the temperature units, but what the problem we're having with is we just don't have quite enough rearing space to get them where they need to be. These 2 tanks would eliminate that problem and put us right on target. So with that, I would ask that you guys allow me to spend roughly $1,200 on these 2 new polyethylene tanks for the Warren Fish Hatchery. Do you have any questions?
Make a motion to approve.
A motion made by Commissioner Green, seconded by Commissioner Baldwin.
I have one question. Do you consider Warren in the middle part of the state?
I do, actually.
Hey, watch yourself.
Okay, I just wondered, thank you. See, Paul? We discussed this earlier. Thank you.
Could you point it out on a map for us?
So I got my start, I spent 6 years working at that hatchery. That's where I got my start in fisheries. Tandy can point it out on the map very well.
Okay, any other comments? Commissioner Temple?
Yes, just for the commission and the viewing public, what size trout are we raising here?
These are
The optimum size?
So they're about 2.5 inches long. We put them
Okay.
covered up. So,
2.5 inches?
yep, it's a put grow and take program. If you have any, experience, it's worth getting the hiking boots out, the backpack, the fly rod. It's a fun fishery. It really is.
Okay. Any other comments? All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you, Jason. Okay, next item, item 5. Approval to accept a $150 donation from Edward and Sarah Holden, Jocelyn and Marjorie Clark and Joe Gertie in memory of John Jack Holden, who passed away on December 25th, 2017 on Mount Vaughn Cliff. And this is with Kevin Jordan.
This was a donate, this is actually supposed to be on the consent, but we got it in late, so my apologies.
Yeah, well, that's how I'm getting even with you.
Yeah, I see that. So this is basically a donation that the family of Jack Holden makes on an annual basis. Their son was John, who passed away, if you remember, back in December of 2017. It was a multi-day search up on Bond Cliff. Kind of a bizarre rescue. Nice family, and they have made these donations ever since that date, around this time of year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody can make a motion. Motion made by Commissioner Baldwin, seconded by Commissioner Hodgdon. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Okay. Next item, which is, even though it's after item 5, is item 3, just to make things interesting. Request commission adaptation of the department's 2019 moose permit allocation recommendations for the 2019 moose hunting season with Chris Ross.
Good afternoon, everyone. If we're not sure if this works. Brilliant. Okay. So, as you know, we do look at moose annually, even though in general we do biennial season setting, and that's because of how things are going for moose as our climate continues to change. So we don't always have to come before you, but we felt we should this year. So the recommendation, of course, is the usual timing for the moose season, October 19th through the 27th, starting the 3rd Saturday in October and running for 9 consecutive days. Yep, that's not gonna work.
If using the left of the...
I am.
Come on,
That's
Yeah,
right.
I know what he did. He unplugged the USB thing that runs it to plug it in.
Oh, we can blame Cat.
It's not, it's right there.
Try it again.
All right, Ken can be the manual changer. I'll change the
Okay.
battery, see if that's...
Okay, so before we get into the nuts and bolts of the season, I wanted to review what has gone on with our research. So Our last collaring was in 2018. We did not collar this January, so our collaring is done. We do have a graduate student that is still looking at weather impacts on and its influence on ticks and tick uptake by moose. So he'll be done this June, I believe, and then that will pretty much be it for New Hampshire. Vermont is done collaring this January, so they did collar 35 animals this January. Maine collared about 96 animals. Maine is going to collar again next year. Vermont is done this year. And then once Maine collars one more year, they are done as well. So, based on our information, this is strictly New Hampshire. You can see this is, these are the years we are most interested in. This is the first time we did collaring and when we discovered that winter tick was the primary cause of mortality in the North Country. We recognized things were getting worse. We redid the entire study and asked Vermont and Maine to join us so we could get a better idea of how ticks change based on different weather and moose density patterns. So you can see here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 years where we had outbreaks that were so severe it killed more than 50% of our calf crop. In addition, a certain percentage of our adults. Right here, 2016, we had a drought in the fall, very severe drought, when ticks are actively questing to get on the moose. And it killed the vast majority of the ticks, and instantaneously, practically, we see an improvement. Very few calves died, very few adults died, so that was great. Kent, next slide.
Yeah, got it.
Oh, okay. So in addition to changes in mortality, there are so many ticks on these moose that they also impact the productivity of the cows. So you can see again in our calving rates were fairly decent early on and just consistently dropped down. Twinning rates, fairly decent, well actually not too decent, but much higher than they have been subsequently. Very, very low, non-existent really. But following that tick die-off, things did improve a little bit. Successive calving means the percentage of cows who calve each year should be high. You can see it's very low for us. So ticks died off because of that drought, and things did improve very quickly, which is great. Summer survival is high pretty much and unchanged. So when these little babies are born in the spring, these guys do well. There's not high predation. Ticks don't bother them because ticks come on in the fall. And so the calf mortality that we're talking about are calves that are born, live through the winter, and then the ticks kill them that following spring. So vehicle kill, we do look at that every year. It pretty much follows the rise and fall of our moose population. And you can see it is declined. Our moose population has declined over time, as has vehicle kill. We did see increases in the White Mountains this past year and also in the Connecticut Lakes, but they were relatively small. The White Mountains and the North region are the two areas where we see the majority of moose vehicle collisions. We're killing about 2.5 times more moose on our roads than we take in our season. So what you're going to see now, we manage moose based on 6 regions. So up in this corner here, the region that we're discussing will be highlighted in red. Here is the estimated moose density for that area, the 5-year trend of the population, how it's gone. This is a negative 0.04, very slight decline. This white line is the estimated moose density based on the moose observations by white-tailed deer hunters. This red line is the goal for the regional population, and that's set every 10 years by the general public in our 10-year planning process. This green line is relatively new. We instituted that in the past 10-year planning process because when your population, when you really are no longer the cause of that population's decline or increase, it's really out of our hands at this point. You've got to set, you have to ask the general public, at what point do you want us to stop hunting? Because really, we are not the tail that is wagging this dog. It truly is changes in our climate that are exacerbating ticks and rainworm and other factors for moose. So, based on these inputs, you can see we saw some growth here. It's kind of settled off this past year. We don't believe that 10 permits issued again this year is going to cause a great deal of change, and we're recommending we stay at that. Oh, and up here, so here's what we're recommending. This is either sex, antlerless only, and these are the past 2 years of permit issuance. So we're recommending that we stay the course here. In the north, this is where all of our research has been done. You can see things have never really got to this goal. People requested fewer moose based on the amount of vehicle collisions they were having. We've seen some real changes here. Winter tick truly is the driving force in this population. We did see some growth here, and we're recommending, again, we stay the course at 15 either sex permits. The White Mountains, this population just continues to decline. We saw about 36 animals hit by cars here. This has always been the worst area for vehicle collisions. So in the face of this continuous decline, we are recommending that we reduce permit issuance by 5, leaving us with 10 permits issued across this area. The central region, we've seen 2 years of growth after what seemed like a never-ending decline, and we're recommending we stick with the permit issuance of 6, which is 1 moose to be taken from each wildlife management unit. The Southwest, we did actually reach the cutoff point here, and what we instituted for recommendations with this cutoff is that we would reissue permits if we saw 2 years of growth that left us with a population that was at least 13% above the cutoff. That basically tells us that growth is actually happening. We have seen that. In fact, it's 25% above, and we are above the goal. So we're recommending that we issue the same type of permit density that we see just north of there in the central region, which is 1 permit issued for each wildlife management unit. The Southeast is the only place we don't have a green line. Several 10-year management plans ago, the general public said they wanted as few moose there as possible. This population's been fairly stable, no growth really at all. And we're recommending we stick with the 5 permit issuance. Some years they get nothing there. This last year, I believe they got 40%. They got 1 moose in each unit. So in pink are the actual changes from 15 down to 10 in the White Mountains, from 0 up to 3 in the Southwest. Everything else stays the same, leaving us with a big change of 2 from 51 to 49. And we're recommending that, again, this year we allow a Hunt of a Lifetime and the Wildlife Heritage Foundation to have a permit, which leaves us with 51 permits in all. And again, changes are in pink. This is how it breaks out by wildlife management unit. Any questions?
Yeah, on your densities,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I read it wrong or if what's printed is wrong. The density of the, over by the Seacoast is higher than it is in the White Mountains?
No, no.
Didn't it say .04 for density in the White Mountains?
Oh, no, I
Per
think
square mile?
what you were reading was so this
That was-
estimated density is 0.1,
Yeah.
and I think in the White Mountains it's about 0.35. Yeah, 0.30.
All right, what was the next one after that then?
That's.
All right, I read the 5-year trend.
Yeah, right,
It's
yeah.
.04?
Yeah, so it's zero, pretty much zero here. So over 5 years, you're really right back
It
where you
changes
began. So there's
okay.
really no change.
Okay.
Nothing's really changed dramatically, other than the White Mountains is continuing to decline.
All right, no, that makes more sense
Yeah.
now.
Any questions? Yes.
So of the permits issued every year, do you have an average percentage of how many of those tags actually get filled?
Yep, so we're about 70% this last year. It ranges from, we were at 90% success rate in the Connecticut lakes, down to about 40% down in the southeast.
So when you think about those 100 vehicle kills, do those just track the composition of the herd, or do you see, you're more apt to see breeding females be killed by a vehicle, or calves?
No, it does seem to be young males are slightly more
So they're just apt to be more
seen,
mobile.
just because they're more mobile. But we see calves, cows, bulls, they're all killed, unfortunately. Yes.
Could you take just another minute and explain the tick and the fall relationship? We had a dry fall,
Yes.
less
So-
ticks.
Yep, so these ticks, in order for ticks to be able to quest effectively, they have got to have a way to get water. They can't just sit up there forever. They desiccate. So they climb up on vegetation and quest. All ticks kind of quest in this manner. Most ticks that we have here in the state fall down each evening in the duff, and that's where they get their water, however little it is. Winter ticks do not. Once they reach the apex of where they're going to quest, they stay there, and they quest as an entire egg mass. So the egg mass hatches, all the ticks, they actually link their legs together, climb to the apex of where they're going to quest, which is a perfect height to get on deer and moose. And then they quest there, and they stay there until they either desiccate and die, freeze and die, or get on a deer or moose. So in the face of drought, they have no way to get moisture. They are relying on rainfall or condensation in order to do well. And in drought conditions, they die. So it killed them all off, really.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
No other questions for Chris?
Okay.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody like to make a motion? Motion made by Commissioner Patch to, what's the motion for what?
Moose permit allocation recommendations. Go with those recommendations.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Patch and seconded by Commissioner Stohl. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Okay. Informational information items, financial statement with Kathy Labonte. She's not here either.
Yeah, I'm the financial guru
Yes, Kathy.
today. Yeah.
Okay.
So to go to the part that matters, if you go to I believe it's the last page in your package, page 4. And if you look at the top of that page, you'll see that our license revenue is $733,000 and change ahead of plan. And if you go down below, you'll see that we are $241,000 ahead of where we were at this time last year. So all is good on the unrestricted revenue. If you go to the previous page, page 3, overall unrestricted revenue is $185,000 ahead of where we were at this time last year. So we are on track, and hopefully we will stay there. Kathy was rolling in OHRV dough this morning when I was in her office. So this last little storm has been quite beneficial for that purpose, because we actually had we weren't going great guns since the whole fiscal year, since July, and then we had kind of a flop last month with you know, a lot of rain and snow, or a lot of rain, especially down south, but hopefully we'll make up for it this month and be back on track. And that's really about it. If you got any questions, I'm happy to do my best to answer.
Any questions for Glenn? Okay, thank you, Glenn.
I have one question.
Commissioner Hodgdon.
So we have a certain assumed lapse each year. Do you have a sense, and if Kathy's a better person to answer this, that's fine. Do you have a sense of whether we're typically at that 3% lapse? Or is there a lot of variation in that? Or?
There is, but we almost always lapse more than 3% because we aren't, you know, quote unquote, generally funded. We don't have the sort of the world sitting on our shoulders like the general funded agencies are to demand that you make your lapse number. So we usually exceed it. We're frequently in the 6% range, and that's typically because of retirements and other issues like that we don't end up expending all our appropriated funds. So it's not unusual to see you know, $1 million or more actually lapse back to the Fish and Game Fund at the end of the fiscal year.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Standing committees. Policy Committee, Commissioner Carr, who is not here, which is perfect. This is a good opportunity for me to charge the Policy Committee with an item. I would like to charge the Policy Committee with working with Colonel Jordan to come up with a proper a statement regarding the proper use of commission badges and what they can and cannot be used for. That's it. Legislative Committee, Commissioner Stohl.
Mr. Chairman, we met this morning before this meeting and with Paul and discussed the legislation that's out there in front of us. And we only had one that we took a real strong position on. We thought we took the position earlier, but we wasn't sure, but there was a motion and seconded and unanimous to oppose House Bill 640, which is establishing a registration fee for canoes and kayaks as written. That was all that we really took any action on, other than address all the different bills, and we did discuss all the OHIV bills, and they're basically in the Resources Committee, and they have yet to take very much action on them. There's a couple that we're not in favor of, but there's some that may be lumped together and addressed together. But other than recommending to the full commission to formally oppose House Bill 640, that's basically my report.
So that's a motion.
That's a motion. I move
To oppose
as
640 and change to oppose as written.
as written.
And, okay, motion made by Commissioner Stoll, seconded by Commissioner Patch. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you, Commissioner Stoll. Okay, Rivers Committee, Commissioner Hodgdon.
Thank you. So the Rivers Management Advisory Committee met on January 16th as a committee, and then jointly later in the day with the Lakes Management Advisory Committee. The agenda was lengthy, but I'll just highlight three aspects of it for your familiarity. While during the period of time when the state budget was more constrained in the 2013, 14, and 15 time period, the staff at DES who supported these committees' activities shrunk down to, I think, a low of 1.5 FTE. So as a result of that, they were not able to take on many new initiatives. And that's changed with the last budget. They're getting a bit more staff support. So the committee took a look at how they wanted to move beyond just doing the bare minimum of statutory work to actually taking on new initiatives. And while that process is ongoing, I think the one that's maybe most interesting is an effort to create a program which would visually represent the relative health of our bodies of water in the state. So the notion would be that when you go to a water body like a lake or a river at an access point, there would be some sort of simple visual representation that would tell you whether or not the water is suitable for swimming, eating the fish, the perhaps level of recreation that it'll support, level of use that it gets, and that's just an effort to explain to the public the relative health of the body of water. The committee also approved a letter of concern or opposition for the proposed wetlands rules, and I won't bore you with a whole description of it, but the general concept that they addressed was that these new rules basically expand the number of projects that are eligible for permit by notification, and they do that in a way that would also shrink the amount of time DES has to consider these permits, and that would effectively limit the ability of local conservation commissions and local advisory committees to weigh in, because the time frame would now be as short as 5 days, and they often don't meet in that window. So they expressed a concern that the rules constrained that local input too much. And then lastly, a lot of time was spent on how to foster just more participation in these local advisory committees. They are a required part of the, for instance, the rivers that are in the in-stream flow program. They're required to have these entities, and there needs to be more effort made to encourage the towns who abut these bodies of water, encourage them to appoint people to these local advisory committees and get their active participation. That's my summary.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Hodgdon. Lakes Committee. I would like to recommend that we submit Commissioner Temple's name to be put on the Lakes Committee to replace Commissioner Millett.
So moved.
Okay. Motion made by Commissioner Patch,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Green. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we will submit his name to the Lakes Committee. Handbook and Orientation Committee, Commissioner Patch.
We're still in our review process right now, but I would remind everybody that if you have any input for a change or improvement to the handbook, I'd love to hear about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Patch. Strategic Planning Committee, Commissioner Hodgdon.
Thank you. So the committee met. We are about halfway through our 5-year plan. The committee would like to recommend that the committee undertake a process that would essentially be a midpoint review, just where we are relative to what our objectives were in the plan, and also do an examination of again, whether or not we're meeting those action items, whether or not we need to devote additional resources, how we might find those resources to accomplish the goals in that 5-year plan, and then just identify any opportunities where 2.5 years in, maybe we want to make amendments to it. Just seems to the committee like we're halfway through that document, and it's a good time to take a look at where we are, what we need to be doing, and just make sure that we're fine-tuned in any way that we need to be. So I don't know that we really need approval from the full commission, but I wanted to just update everybody on what we intend to do and certainly recommend doing, and there'll be more to follow on that as we conduct our work.
I think on something like that, you only need approval from the chairman.
So I would ask for that then.
No.
Back to the drawing board.
No, I would fully support the idea of doing this. It's a good idea, we're halfway through, and so I therefore would charge the Strategic Planning Committee with continuing along and do whatever you think is needed to come up with a reasonable conclusion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hodgdon. Wildlife Heritage Foundation, Commissioner Hodgdon.
All right, real quick. So I just want to give an update on the success of the raffle. The drawing was held in early January, and the foundation and Operation Game Thief will each net approximately $9,000 from that raffle. So thank you to those of you that participated. I don't know whether you were winners or not, but hopefully, if not this year, then next year. But it was a successful fundraising effort for those two organizations. And then my sense is likely that that partnership will continue, that they'll both continue to work together on that raffle.
Yeah, my success with the raffle was not that good. Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hodgdon. Awards Committee, Commissioner Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully, the awards committee will meet tomorrow. We do have to make the final determination. There were a number of proposals for awards. I will say the negative, unfortunate thing was out of 7 awards, we got letters of recommendation for only 4 of those awards, which is kind of too bad. The breakdown, if anyone's interested, was the Ellis Hatch Award. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 submitted for consideration. The Volunteer Award, 2, 3 were for consideration. Conservation Award, 3 for consideration. And Habitat Stewardship, actually there weren't any specific ones for Habitat, but we changed some of them around for that. So hopefully tomorrow, Colonel, perhaps tomorrow, you have time, and hopefully we will make the final determination tomorrow morning. I encourage anybody, anytime for next year to get a lot of these considerations in, because it's a great great way of thanking people, so many people that volunteer for all these number of things. So hopefully we'll have a good report for you next time, next meeting.
Okay, now, Commissioner Baldwin, you lost one member with Commissioner Millette.
Yes, sir.
And so I would like to put someone else on that committee with you. Oh, Christina, you have your hand up, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you, Commissioner Whoopi.
You're so welcome.
That was,
That's because you
you
didn't
and
show up at the
now
last
a
meeting.
member of
That's my
the
fault.
awards committee.
How'd you know I wanted that so bad?
I couldn't even get out of my mouth for, I saw your hand going up, so, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Old business. I actually have an item on old business. A few meetings ago, Mr. Ellingwood gave us a nice presentation on CWD and mentioned that it was at our border because it was in Quebec, and it was asked of another commissioner whereabouts in Quebec that case was. And I'd like to ask if we could see that on a map or something,
Sure can.
just for a follow-up
Yep.
to that.
I will tell you, if you can picture the boundary between Quebec and Ontario, if you go up Ontario, there's a turn to the west. It's right at that corner, that is. But I'd be glad to provide you with a map. I do also want to mention, Quebec has been very quiet about this experience. As a province, we're told by their staff that they have a tradition of keeping things pretty close to the table, and they've certainly done that in this case. So I'll provide you what I can find.
Yeah.
I happen to know because I know somebody who's worked on the population reduction. Otherwise, I wouldn't know myself.
Okay.
Yep,
But
glad to do that.
It was like that person had said when they asked for it, that Quebec is a big
It sure is.
province, and to have, see how much closer it really is to us than it was when it was in Pennsylvania or
Nope.
some of the other places, it'd just be helpful.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have any old business?
Yeah, I'd like to just expound on, I think I was the commissioner that asked where that was.
Yeah, you might have been.
Seems like you threw me under the bus here. But, if it is up there, that's quite a long ways away from New Hampshire.
I was told something on the order of 150 to 200 miles.
At least, yeah.
But I defer to you. I don't have local knowledge up there.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think far further than that, but.
Okay, but you might-
That's quite a long way.
I would concur to your opinion on
Quebec
that.
is
I
a
do-
huge problem.
It is. It is huge. The issue for us isn't the farm presence, though. It's the monitoring effort to determine if it's in free-range deer or not. That is a concern to us. And to date, I know they have not found any positives outside of the fence. I believe there's actually 2 farms rather than 1 that have it, not broadly publicized. But in any case, 0 positives to my knowledge outside of the bounds of the fence. One of the farms, I understand, has been depopulated. The other, last I heard, still had some deer in it. That's a routine practice to depopulate where you have infected deer, and yet there's huge political resistance to that action in the absence of any remuneration, and so almost always it entails a compensation to the farmer for the reduction of those animals.
Commissioner Patch?
Mark, when you depopulate a farm like that, what do they do with the carcasses?
I believe they're incinerated or deep buried in a lined landfill.
You were commenting on how tough it is to kill that particular protein.
Kent, do you happen to know otherwise?
I'm not sure how they're doing it up there. I know they make all kinds of stuff. I was out in Madison, Wisconsin one time and saw the facilities they had. And they had what was called the digester. which was about the size of a tractor trailer, and you threw carcasses into it and they just dissolved. So there's a lot of technology out there as far as actually destroying the stuff, but it's not
Is that
cheap.
machine patented by the mafia?
Made by Guardian.
Made by Guardian Company.
So I believe that was an alkaline solution that they were dropping those deer into, Ken?
Yeah, it was sodium hydroxide or something like that. Its intent was to denature proteins. It destroys proteins of any kind. So that was how it worked. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just briefly mention, yesterday we gave a presentation to the Fish and Game Committee, the legislature, at their request, similar to but slightly modified, shorter, on the same subject matter. And there was a lot of questions, and Commissioner Green was there. I think you would agree that it went pretty well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
I should mention too, just so you're aware, occasionally our law enforcement division finds something that's been brought into the state illegally from a CWD positive jurisdiction, and those carcasses are confiscated and we bring them to an incineration facility. It's a pet crematorium that can handle something up to the size of a horse, and it's high temperature incineration.
We do the same with free-range farm deer that escape, that are not able to be returned to the owner because of a lack of identification. But clearly, if we see a red deer on the landscape, we know it's escaped from somebody, although requirements are that they be tagged. They're not always tagged. If it's an identifiable animal, we encourage the owner to recover it, and if they indicate they can't or they won't, then we would handle it in the same fashion.
And I assume that they're tested first, though.
Yes. In the case of high suspect animals, Kent?
Well, in a lot of cases, we will if we can get our hands on them. In other cases, some of the stuff that comes in from another jurisdiction, we're simply not going to spend the money to test something, whether it's positive or negative. It's incinerated.
I meant more finding, even if you found a red deer in the wild here, you'd still want to know if.
Yeah, most
so
of those,
test
yeah.
it. Okay.
Those we do, if we can get our hands on the head, as it were, and get the samples, we do take samples and have those tested, yes, that's correct.
Commissioner Hodgdon?
This is a question, when law enforcement seizes a piece of meat that comes from an area where there is CWD, do we have protocols in place to ensure that there's not cross-contamination with other specimens that we're holding for an investigation? I mean, presumably these things all go in a freezer together. How do we ensure that?
No, go ahead.
Do you mind?
No,
Yeah.
no.
Typically, law would notify us immediately. We would immediately respond. I don't believe freezing would be a likely component, although it may have happened. Fact is that we're moving. And keep in mind also, it's not the venison that's legal to bring in. It is the whole carcass that concerns us. Yeah.
We're very careful with it.
Yeah.
Because we know it takes just one, and wildlife has worked well with us when we have one of these things to get it eradicated as quickly as we can.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
New business. Anybody have any new business? Okay. Commissioner report. I will start that off. I'm not quite sure how to approach this, being that we're in a unfortunate situation where I'm one of the old guys here and there's a lot of new ones. Commissioner Morse, he retired like a year ago and was replaced by Commissioner Green. He'd served on the commission a long time. We're having a resolution made for him. Now, in the past, what we have done in the case of someone who was exemplary as a commissioner was we had a jacket made for them that had the years that they served and their name on it, and basically the same format that what we have. I'd like permission from the commission to be able to order that jacket, knowing that the fund comes out of our personal commission fund, you know, that we all kick into.
You need a motion on that?
I just need general approval is all I'm looking for.
I say we approve it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll let Commissioner Carr know, being he's the treasurer, and he can order Walt's jacket for me. Thank you. Any other commissioners have something? Commissioner Baldwin?
Yes, sir. I got a communication from Hanover, New Hampshire, and I want to publicly give a shout out to Mark and Ken and Dan Bergeron of the outstanding job that they did with the town of Hanover, and they got a lot of cooperation with the town of Hanover at their request for additional deer permits. And if it's a very short notice article that was in the local news, and I'll make it very brief, but last fall, Hanover was the first town in the state to launch a special hunting program. That was by their request to curb the deer population, to deal with the deer overpopulation, and it was a success according to the figures from the State Fish and Game Department. 34 of the 100 hunters who were selected to take up the 2 antlerless deer in Hanover during the hunting season harvested a total of 47 deer. Deer Project leader Dan Bergeron said in an email on Thursday, that means the hunters had a 34% success rate and 24% of the tags were filled, Bergeron said. It is really good considering average success rates for hunters as a whole are about 14%. The deer management program was well received by hunters, landowners, and townspeople. People involved with the program met on Thursday night in Etna to discuss what worked and what changes they'd like to see. Officials are encouraging landowners to share their contact information with senior planner Vicki Smith, Hanover, if they want to invite hunters onto their land or add their property to the Deer Management Assistance Program. This program was requested because a lot of the personnel or members of Hanover, the deer were eating there under the growth, and they were really making it obvious that they requested, I think is a fair way to say it, Mark. They requested help in that situation. That help was done in due diligence by Mark and Ken and Dan, and they should be congratulated, and I do publicly congratulate them. Well done.
Thank you, Commissioner Baldwin. Any other commissioners have anything exemplary to share? Okay, seeing none, we'll move over to the director's report.
Well, sorry I was a little late getting here. I had left the governor council meeting and was just about getting on the highway when I got a phone call from the governor saying, come back. So I had to turn around and go back to G&C because DES had our permit for repairs and all to the Downing's Landing boat site in Alton, and a couple of councilors had questions, and so to avoid having it tabled and sit for a couple of weeks, I had to get back and respond. So anyway, you'll be pleased to know that the council today approved our purchase of the Ruger properties as well as the Kimball Hill property. So that is over 5,000 acres that we'll be closing on in the near future. I don't know, but you know, do we have? I don't know the closing date.
I believe it's imminent, but I don't know the date.
Yeah, I had texted, got a text while I was sitting here that Rich was itching to make sure that things had transpired, and so you know, that those two purchases were in excess of $4 million. So that was a job well done. We had a lands team meeting yesterday, and we had discussions related to over the next couple of years shifting more and more toward management from land purchase, simply because we've got more than we can handle probably at this stage of the game. Especially a lot of these larger properties have road systems and such inside them that are going to be a lot to maintain. So we'll be discussing that more with you all as time progresses, I'm sure. Trying to remember what else we had on today's agenda. It was a pretty big agenda. We had a large OHRV thing, which didn't even get any questions on, so that was a good thing. And a contract, we executed a contract to survey that Ruger property, and to give you an idea of the size we're talking, the survey, the boundaries was a $110,000 contract, so not insignificant. When you think in terms of the fact that we've got that Ruger property is about 5 square miles of land, so, or in 2 pieces. You know, other than that, we're just really kind of getting into the budget stuff. The governor did his budget address last week. We don't have schedules yet, but the fun will start fairly soon with with House Finance. We've been going along all right in the legislature, I think, with our bills so far. And really that's where it's at. We're still ironing out some leftovers from the shutdown as relates to a few of the federal grants. But pretty much things are making progress, and I think that's it. Oh, I know one more thing. In addition to the CWD issue, we've got more and more people being concerned about as this whole PFAS, PFOS in groundwater deal becomes more understood, and people realize how widespread it really is. There's a major, we have major problems with it at Pease. There was an individual plane crash there at one point where 10,000 gallons of foam was dumped on the runway in one incident, and that has created a nice load of straight hooch that is going into the washing off in a direction over there. The current EPA limit, which many people think is too high, is at 70 parts per trillion. The surface waters in this area are pushing 7,000 to 8,000 parts per trillion. There is concern because there's a lot of deer in the area, and a lot of the locals harvest deer, and as well as the refuge, where we have a 2-day deer hunt down there. And so there is concern about accumulating of this stuff and the flesh, et cetera, et cetera. So I met with the town fathers in Newington last night at their Monday night selectmen's meeting. And I've also talked to the refuge manager. We're gonna try to work out in next fall to have some sampling done of deer tissue. I don't have any idea personally even what the protocol for that is yet, but we'll have to learn it, I guess. And is this stuff, basically these chemicals were used in everything from firefighting foam to Teflon pans to Scotch Guard to keep water off your liquids off of your furniture and your garments. Most people even now aren't really aware, but in Merrimack, there's currently about a 67 square mile area where all the groundwater is contaminated because there was a plant there at St. Gobain that was treating fabric, and the stuff was aerosolized and went up into the air and came down in a huge swath on the ground. So it is ubiquitous around the world practically. Newspaper yesterday, the local rag in Portsmouth, they found it at the Durham landfill, it's at the Coakley landfill, it's at the Rye landfill, it's at a car wash in the groundwater down in Hampton. The stuff is all over the place. It was in and it's actually, I believe there's over 5,000 different individual chemicals that make up this group of compounds that are, problematic. So, and they're extremely stable, so they're hard to break down and make go away. Some of them bioaccumulate, which is the concern. We have tested fish at Berry Brook because there was concern there as that comes out of the Coakley landfill, which is a capped landfill that Paul's lucky enough to have in, at least partly in his town. Portsmouth, we were smart enough to go dump our crap down over his way in Greenland, so. So I bring that to your attention because I think you're gonna see more and more and more of this issue. And as we talk about CWD, there's becoming more and more concern about, okay, what's going on with critters that drink the surface waters. And by the way, there are several farms. This is all in the area of Emery Farm that we just acquired and whatnot. And there's a dairy farm and a meat cattle farm in that same area. And the question is, okay, so now we're going to start testing milk. There's a big concern about eggs because apparently some of these compounds will concentrate in eggs, and of course everybody's got chickens these days and everybody's selling eggs. And so that is rapidly ratcheting up the scare factor with the public, these issues. So we'll keep you informed as to what's going on there too, because obviously the threat of CWD is bad enough. We don't need to be talking about issues with PFOAs and stuff in our wildlife. So there you go.
One question I have, on the Ruger property, if it's 110 grand to have it surveyed, would it be prudent of us to move that property ahead a little bit on the signage program to make sure we don't have to have it resurveyed to?
Well, it is getting, if you actually read the contract document, I'm not sure if it was ever surveyed before. This might be pretty much an initial program, so it's getting the full vote. Which is one of the reasons it's so expensive, because it's getting, it's not just, they're not just running out there and popping in some corner stakes, and a few iron pipes. It's gonna be blazed. There's language about moving all of, a path where the brush is moved around all the boundaries, and it's gonna be a serious job, so, I think that, when they're done, it's gonna be pretty well identified what's what.
Okay, I was
Probably look like Corbin Park when we're finished.
just concerned that we, have it surveyed and purchase the property, and by the time it came up to have signage done, stuff would be grown up enough that then you'd end up trying to relocate these.
We still haven't got to the point where we're gonna figure out, where we're gonna park people and all of that, but we will get it together with all the signs.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions of the director? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Director. Call to the public. Anybody in the public?
I'll just ask, where does the $5 million to purchase that property come from?
Hang on a second, we're gonna have I was told we're gonna do a little bit of a change in call to the public, that I should have each person state their name and where they're from first.
Doug Whitfield, and I live in Manchester.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And my question was, where does the $5 million
Okay,
come
so that total amount, a significant amount of it was Pittman Robertson grant money, okay, which was what we call the bump. We had excess amount of it. You have to spend it in 2 years or it reverts back. So that was a significant amount of it. Some of it came from the ARM fund for one of the pieces, which, is that right, Mark?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. I think we got 400 and something thousand from that, which that's mitigation for highway work that goes into a fund at DES. We also had a vote of the commission that put a chunk of our saved up habitat account money into it, and there was actually on the piece that's in Orford, the town contributed $25,000 into it, and
Kimball Hill?
Kimball Hill.
TNC is also a shared partner in that.
Yeah, TNC. And in fact, TNC was an intermediate owner of the property for Kimball Hill, and for the Ruger properties, the conservation fund was. So they essentially acquired the properties as they were available, so they wouldn't get taken out from under us while we got our act together, and we're able to reimburse them and take these properties over. And I believe that the Ruger properties also gave us a discount over the appraised value, subject to them being named the Ruger WMA, to the tune of $375,000, if I'm not mistaken.
Just so you're aware, almost all these properties are being purchased exclusively with federal funds. If there is Habitat Fund money involved, then we come before the commission, ask their permission.
Yeah.
And when that happens, that's to provide match so that we can leverage federal funds.
Because the federal funds are 25-75, so, that needs to have that match, so.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll come back to you if you got another question. Okay,
I'm Julia Sinclair, and I'm from Newmarket, New Hampshire.
Okay,
I actually have two questions. The first one being, I haven't heard anything from any of you guys about the hiking scene and the rescues that, if there have been any that have had to happen lately. I was wondering as kind of an update on that and if that's going better than it has in the past.
It remains about the same. We do a couple hundred a year. We're tracking for the first time, we're on our third year of tracking non-responsive reports, which are calls lieutenants get at home and they handle over the phone, so they don't have to respond to that. And that has been a larger number than I ever anticipated. It was almost 100 last year.
You're guiding people down.
Yeah, or we're telling them how to get to a trailhead or giving them advice. So I've got, they don't get paid for that. They're taking that call at night. The former lieutenants did it for eons. And so I've asked these guys to record that so we can track that. That's increased our numbers quite a bit. But we're on par. In 2018, we did 200 missions total, which is about where we always are. The Hike Safe card did very well, brought us in 134,000 last year, so that continues.
I think last year, for the first time in a long time, for last year, last fiscal year, you were in the black on the
yeah, which is good. So that's we gained a lot in that, but it continued, and it creates a hardship on staff because we have limited staff. But
I was wondering if it would benefit that situation to have like a subcommittee or a committee like within this group to focus on problem solving, since it's kind of continues always to be an issue.
Well, we've studied it a lot. I can tell you it's probably been one of the most studied things that I know of in the department, and there's no easy solution to it.
Can't fix stupid.
No, I mean it's very difficult. I think that we've come a long ways in partnership with the Forest Service. We have a volunteer group now that stand at the trailheads in the summer to turn people back. Yeah, to try and encourage people. So I think we're doing about everything that we can do. We're much better than we used to do.
Okay. Can I ask the second question now, or do you want to go to his second question? Unrelated to that.
We'll go back to Doug. Go ahead, Doug.
I'm still Doug Whitfield.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm still in Manchester, I think.
All right.
You mentioned, Glenn, that one problem with all this land is going to be maintaining it and servicing it. I would think that might be an area where you could get a lot of volunteers to do that type of thing, to whatever work might be done there, or watching, or doing like she's talking, and being there to answer questions. And in our programs around the state that we do, one of the big questions we get after we do a presentation for is, gee, what can we do? But they get excited after they listen to us. What can we do to help Fish and Game? Can we volunteer? And I've had many of them that have said, yes, but I don't really know, what you could do other than call Fish and Game in Concord and let them know that you're available. And I've had some of those people come back to me because a lot of times we go back and do a second and a third program. And they say, gee, I contacted Fish and Game and they told me they didn't have any need for us. And really, when you get people who are willing, grab them. Don't wait for them to change their mind on something else. So even if just we had some idea of a particular person in a particular volunteer program that they could get into, if we had that with us, just to say, you could call so-and-so and they're in charge of this particular program and they need volunteers, that might just get us more people to help with our programs.
Just so you know, everybody, and we do an entire webpage that lists all the volunteer opportunities through Fish and Game, not just us, but other places to reach out. And every time we are looking for a specific group of people to volunteer with something, we put out a press release, and we also sometimes partner with other organizations and we'll put a joint press release. So we do try to advertise it pretty heavily, and there's also social media.
I don't think I've ever seen a press release on a volunteer.
Yep. Yeah, well, there have been. I can also give you that, I'll send you that link for the specific webpage, but we always refer people there.
Because they call and they say they don't get any success in having somebody
It's
tell them.
hard enough to voice that, I can pass it to somebody else to know, but
Yeah.
I'll send you that link and you can certainly share it.
All right, we can just tell them to contact that particular
And
one.
you know, I mean, it depends. Nicholas got a lot of stuff going on, especially in the education type area. When we're talking about management, you know, and we've got a contractor out there with a brontosaurus or a fellow buncher, or, you know, we got Clucci out there, you know, grading 10 miles of road and gravel. I mean, it's, you know, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about, and there's a certain level of, you know, liability and other issues associated with that sort of heavier level of work that we have to be careful about. But Nicola can get you some information on Sir Bailiwick.
So you're all set, Doug? And you're still Julia.
So regarding the I'm still Julia Sinclair in Newmarket, New Hampshire. Regarding the PFA chemicals in the groundwater, I know that you said that it may be affecting the animals in the area, and the dairy and the eggs. How about the plant life?
That, you know, I honestly don't know that much about it, whether the stuff, you know, goes up to, I mean, that is a concern that's been raised, especially as relates to grazing cows. You know, the plants take it up in the water and then the cows eat it, you know, type of thing. I don't, you know, we're all just learning about this stuff, and I'm not even sure. There's probably a lot of just basic research still needs to go on to understand what's going on. I mean, the problem with this stuff is that, you know, it's only in the last decade or so that the technology has been there to detect it at these, I mean, really small levels. I mean, 70 parts per billion is the drinking water currently sort of recommended limit. Well, 70 parts per billion, trillion, you know, 0.07 parts per billion, you know, that's a cup of straight hooch in the Atlantic Ocean practically. I mean, the concentrations are so infinitesimal that it's only recently the technology's been out there to really understand. You know, even you talk 8,000 parts per trillion, people are like, oh my God, 8,000. Well, that's 8 parts per billion. That is still like just exceedingly small quantities of material. And not only does that make it tough to detect, or it was until recently, but if you flip it around and you think about the fact that to decontaminate and get that little bit out, the volume of water that has to be treated to get anywhere is enormous compared to the little bit of stuff in there that you got to remove. So it's going to be a vexing and expensive question, and there isn't a lot of clarity on exactly what the effects are. You know, I mean, there's a recognition that, you know, you come in contact with this stuff and, you know, your enzyme levels may go off a little bit and this and that, but it isn't as though, you know, okay, if you drink this cup of water with this level for, you know, 10 years, you know, you're going to get liver cancer, and the guy down the street that's not doing it isn't. It's really very fuzzy as to, you know, where it all is at the moment, but it's no question concerning to everybody involved.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments?
So I don't know what the process here, I wasn't on the agenda to speak, but I was actually reminded of something today by something Commissioner Baldwin said. My name is Tom Flynn, I'm the facility manager here at the Albrook Hunter Ed Center. I kind of want to piggyback on what Commissioner Baldwin had to say about the Hanover DEER program, and I'm only assuming here, but with the success of that program, we were actually contacted last fall by a teacher at Hanover High School wanting us to do a program for them. And that program happens to be a hunter education class for their students during their March intensive program, which is coming up next month. what it's going to entail is the first 2 days is they're going to actually have 16 students go through Hunter Education. We're going to travel there the first day and do all the knowledge-based stuff in the classroom setting, where actually I spoke with the superintendent of Hanover High School Systems, and they got permission to bring our training firearms into the school, which is another great, accomplishment for what's going on. And then they come here the second day to complete their outdoor field day to get their certification. And then the final 2 days, they're actually going to be partaking in some activities outdoors. We have a shoot and shoot class where they take 22 rifles with snowshoes on, and we go through the woods, and they get to shoot at spinner targets. And as well, we're going to do a snowshoe and tracking class and indoor archery. So I'm only assuming that it was connected to that program, but I have a good feeling that there was a connection to that and why we were contacted by Hanover High School. So it was a great program.
There's a discussion going on with Newcastle about similar issues.
Awesome.
And I'm sure these towns, I'm sure especially down my way in the southeast, that there'll be an expansion of these kinds of discussions because of the people in deer densities.
While you're out here and up, I would like to personally thank you for hosting this meeting today. It was a very nice facility, and a good lunch and everything. Thank you very much. Commissioner Baldwin.
The interesting thing to me that what kind of instigates this kind of thing, I know firsthand that some of the people that I talked to in Hanover, originally they're very, they were kind of standoffish. No, we don't really like hunting or anything like that. And then they found out that the deer were taking over their properties and stuff like that. And they got to know Fish and Game a little bit more. And they got to know more about management, game management and stuff like that. And learning it that kind of hard way, they're becoming some of our best supporters, and it all boils down to education and production as far as Fish and Game is concerned. They give them what they want, and they say, wow, it really works. So I'm really proud of it and proud of you guys. And,
anybody else have some public comments? Anybody care to make a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Motion made to adjourn by Commissioner Stohl, seconded by Commissioner Temple. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the advice.